Thanks everyone for joining us today. This is our third AMA session in as many months. We had one in June, July, and now August, which I think that's more than we've done in the last 2 years. Hopefully we're getting a bit better at it. And hopefully we'll share some information for you today to help you make a decision as to whether you want to become a shareholder in Pynk. So wishing you a warm welcome to everyone on the call. I recognise some of the names from the Pynk community, which is great. Good to see you here. Thank you for joining. And of course, from the Thunderbeam community, it's the first time we've had the chance to speak to you. So a massive thank you also to the 104 of you who have now indicated an investment on the Thunderbeam platform. We're 70% funded, and so we're very happy with the progress, having gone public live at the beginning of this week. The last AMA session we ran, you might have seen a recording of that on YouTube. We actually took a different tack on that, and we invited Gianluca, who's the CEO of Purple Hat Capital, to talk about why they'd invested in Pynk. He supported us for the last 18 months, and I'm delighted to say we have a guest of honor today in Rudolf Vrabel, Managing Director of 365.fintech, also known as Rudy. Rudy, perhaps you could introduce yourself and give a quick overview of 365.fintech. Obviously, we're going to talk more about 365 later, but if you could give a quick introduction, that would be great.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Rudy. For obvious reasons, since Rudolf in the UK is got a different name than taken than in Germany or Slovakia. I'm a managing director of a fund, of a CVC fund, based in Bratislava, as a direct subsidiary of a bank. We focus mainly on the European region, as our name states. It's mainly fintech companies, but we are not biased. We also look into other verticals which are adjacent or could be very related to fintech, like marketplace, big data, etc.
Great, thank you, Rudy. Looking forward to speaking to you later, so welcome to the call. Before we go on, of course, I'll ask my co-founders and business partners, Seth and Wu, to give a quick introduction, very short and sharp introduction, because you'll probably be familiar with them from the campaign video, but Seth, if you could say hello.
Hey everybody, yeah, Seth here, and I'm the CEO of Pynk.
Thank you, Seth. And Wu?
Hi everybody, good to be back on another AMA, although I hope we're having a little bit of a break after these sessions. But yes, I'm Rupert. I am the COO of Pynk, supporting Mark and Seth in building up the company.
Great, thank you, Wu. And of course, my name is Mark Little, and my role at Pynk is CMO and fellow co-founder Seth and Wu. Okay, so it's just some house rules in terms of the call. As in our previous AMA sessions, we have an hour or so booked. We might go a little bit over, might be a little bit under, depending on where the conversation goes. And we have the chat function below, although I'd specifically ask if you could focus any questions that you might want to ask to the four of us, if you could put those in the Q&A section. So at the bottom of Zoom, you'll see a Q&A tab. If you click that, it opens up another pop-up window. If you post your questions in there, I will try to get through as many as possible. And if you're viewing the call, but you see a question that you like, can I ask, could you please upvote it? So if you give it a thumbs up, that question will go to the top of the list, and that just helps me understand which questions you would like answered. So any questions in the Q&A tab, as before. So I also have some other questions that we've collected through the week from the Pynk community and via social media, so we'll be taking those. And myself, Seth, Rudy will answer those questions, and we'll mix it up a bit in terms of who's answering which question. And just speaking of communities as well, if you aren't yet a member of the Pynk community, please head over to community.pynk.io. As new investors into Pynk, we would love to see you follow us on the journey and get involved in the Pynk community and the crowd. And there's lots of lovely other Pynk crowd members from around the world, and they're all helping each other out. So if you have any questions about Pynk over the next 6 months, 12 months, that's the place to go, and someone will be there to help you. Okay, without further ado, I think we can kick off. So I'm going to kick off with a question from Rudy. And Rudy, yeah, if you gave a brief introduction to 365, but it'd be lovely to hear a bit more about it, the bank that supports 365.fintech, and your kind of approach to investing as a VC. It'd be great if you could give us an introduction and an overview.
Sure. I'll start with a bit of a longer story, but it'll make sense at the end. Basically, we're part of a bank, which is an old type of a bank working in Europe, in many countries, namely Postbank. This concept works in Germany, France, everywhere, but it's an outdated concept. The finance group who bought the Postbank about 5 years ago and became a majority shareholder realized this is a concept that will have to run off at some point or some stage. So they decided to, rather than to change the big ship or the big, tanker and turn it around, they said, let's build something on the side, more maneuverable, something that'll be better adopted and will adjust much better to the current world and current needs of the banking customers. So they built in the new 365 world. The first entity was a 365 bank, which is a digital branch of the Postbank, runs on the same license. So it keeps the cost down that way, utilizes also a lot of know-how, utilizes also all of the back end. While this bank was being built, working with startups, working with innovative ideas, innovative companies. And having done that, we realized that, look, since we're working with the startups, why not work a little bit closer? And why not also maybe invest in them and provide financing, provide advice, work with them a bit closer. So we set up an entity that was in January 2018, which is 365.fintech. This company has a strong commitment from the board to invest into startups, to diversify their investments. We of course have, in order to become relevant, first we started with partnerships. We became investors and also friends with big VC funds like Speed Invest or Finch Capital, but also with smaller sort of let's call them accelerators like Startup Wise Guys or Startup Yard. We've covered quite a lot of journey since then. We also made several individual investments. Currently, we are focusing mainly on what we like currently in the fintech stage are obviously investments. So that's something like Pynk or companies that focus on bringing yield to the customers, let's put it that way. But then also a big topic that we like is open banking, PSD2, and last but not least, payments.
Fantastic. Are there any particular countries that you're looking at that really excite you, Rudy, within the sort of, is it Europe focused or is it a global play, or how do you view that?
Well, we are claiming to be mainly a CE focused fintech, but not exclusively. So we like to look into the region because this region we understand well. But we also have grown over the years, and we see a huge potential, obviously, in Western Europe. So we're looking there too. But the main focus is mainly Europe.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Mark, I had a question to kind of follow on from that. So really with 365 fintech, obviously the new arm that you guys set up, that came out of the bank's kind of changing focus, the changing landscape that was emerging. I'm assuming.
The customer needs, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
We saw where the trend was going, what the customer wants.
So what was the and I don't know if you know the answer to this one, but the coming back to what was the impetus to actually create this new way of interacting with customers? Was it that big shift to mobile? Was that the major reasoning behind it, and changing the habits or perhaps working with new habits? I mean, give me a bit more about that.
Definitely technology was one of those things. I remember in the strategy book back in 2016, which I was reading when we were just putting the idea for shareholders, like, look, this is what we want to do. We already saw the numbers here that people are 4 times as more likely to do banking on their phone rather than on the computer. In the computer, especially for let's call them the older generation, they are not. I mean, computer is something very complicated, especially with Windows. Okay, Apple might be a little bit easier to work with, but if you go on a Windows computer, I mean, there are so many ways you can screw up. But on your phone, it's much easier, much more straightforward with the app. So we saw that this trend, and that's why we created, and I didn't say this explicitly, we created a mobile first and mobile only bank. This is what 365 Bank is.
Yeah.
You do the entire onboarding and everything through your phone. There's no single branch. There's a call center, of course, where you can rely on, or a chat, but everything is done through your phone. And this was something new. Sorry, there was something new in this region. Something we put forward. Of course, we did a lot of advertising, but at the same time, companies like Revolut or TransferWise or Monzo are coming in. So in a way, we helped them a bit, because we opened the bag. We told the customers, look, there are also other ways to bank, rather than going to that old and boring brick and mortar place. So that was the main reason.
But I imagine having the brick and mortar structure behind it actually gave customers a lot of faith and a lot of comfort, knowing that you're trading off licenses that have existed for many years, and that there's still a bit of that history in there. What was there ever an internal conflict between the old and the new?
Of course there is. Whenever you bring a disruption or something new, there will be institutions, people, or situations which don't like change. So there's always some internal conflict, but I don't think there was anything major or anything that would jeopardize the situation. But having said that, as you said, there is some comfort by having the incumbent, something that is reliant, strong, has the license, has been around for some time. So that helps. But that also, and many companies realize that is in a way also a bit of a drag for you, because that old world will be trying to keep you within the limits of the old world, if you know what I mean. So it's better if you want to be totally free and to do your own thing. Of course, it's better not to have any legacy. But at the same time, that legacy can help you, especially when it's a nascent or a new market or something that people are not very familiar with. Yeah,
cool. Sorry, Mark, I derailed some of your questions.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
To hear more.
All relevant and interesting stuff. Thanks, Rudy.
What was the next thing you had for Rudy?
I'm going to come back to Rudy in a moment, so I'm going to hand over to a question for one of us guys, actually. So I've seen a few questions coming through on the Q&A, so thanks everyone on the call for those. We'll get to those in a moment. I'm going to tackle a question that came through social media. So we've been talking a lot about the launch of our investor wallet recently, and with it the thesis portfolio. So Seth, Rue, if you could just give a bit of an overview of exactly what is the investor wallet, when is it launching, but also what is the thesis portfolio, and will we launch other portfolios after that, was the question.
Okay, Rue, do you want to get started on the wallet, and then?
Yeah, I was going to say I'll do wallet, you do portfolio, and that's a good break.
That's teamwork.
So the investor wallet is the first time you'll be able to invest into the Pynk portfolio, and the Pynk portfolio is I'll pass over to Seth for what makes up that, but predominantly it's all the data that everybody's been inputting over the last 12, 18 months, plus a whole bunch of other stuff goes into making what that Pynk portfolio is. Now, why has it taken such a long time to launch our investor wallet, and why couldn't we come out of this straight out the gate? Well, for one, it's working out our regulatory parameters. So we have to be regulated. We're working with regulated assets, and so understanding the jurisdictional requirements, but it took us a very long time to get our heads around, and then pursuing those and raising the capital to get those also took time. So they cost a lot. You have to do them. You have to understand them and what the risks and requirements are, because we need to be able to be protect people's investments. So it's all coming out in Q4 of this year. That will be opening that up, and Mark will be spearheading all the communications about it. So then anybody on the call or anybody watching this video will definitely not miss that. So don't worry about that. There's some cool stuff about the investor wallet, namely that we've been talking for a long time, we're a zero fee portfolio, and we just want people to input into the system. So as long as you're committed to the community and committed to the system and provide data, you get that portfolio entirely for free. So we are a long way outstripping other investments apps that exist out there just by taking off all of those fees. And then, of course, with the system of everybody working together, making it operate better, hopefully we'll be able to perform better than the alternatives that are out there. At least that's the goal. And with that, I'm now going to pass over to Seth in terms of talking about what the makeup of the thesis is and how your input is important to that. You're going to have to take yourself off mute though, Seth. So that
would help. Thank you. The main way that we invest your money is through the thesis portfolio. That's backed up with a smaller allocation of money into something we call the core portfolio. So I'll start with the thesis. Our investment committee works together, but very much aided by the data and the predictions, the research and the votes that come from the crowd, and the signals that come from our artificial intelligence. The committee formulates multiple different investment theses, and each of those can contain several actual individual investments which can change over time, but each thesis has to fit a general kind of common theme and criteria. So the thesis portfolio is really made up of those individual theses, each of which is typically based on one specific subsector in the market, which is currently believed to be undervalued and therefore offers good prospect of profit and returns. This can be in almost any market, wherever we see a fundamental reason to benefit from its current undervalue and our belief that the prices of those assets are likely to improve in the approaching 3 to 5 year timescale. So we develop a strategy for how to deploy each of those theses and all of the assets within the thesis that we've identified to benefit most from our expectations of growth. And we will remain deployed in each asset and each thesis until the reasons for our belief in its increase in value no longer exist. So, if that thesis has already benefited from a large amount of profit, we will gradually remove our investment from it. So, as I say, each of those theses will have a consistent theme. They are currently restricted to long-only strategies, so there's no shorting on those assets in the thesis portfolio. And we apply a particular mix of stop losses and other risk management policies to protect anyone from losses and to maximise the returns. So typically, the assets we're looking at in that portfolio are equities and commodities and precious metals and the like. But in the future, we may expand that further. We're also happy to sit on cash, waiting for the opportune moments to deploy each thesis. So alongside that, as I said, the majority of money goes into the thesis portfolio, but we also have something called the core portfolio, and that's designed to offer a more traditional market tracking exposure. This is the kind of thing you'll generally see in an investment app, but with us, we have a smaller exposure to the market. So it's more designed to ensure that we have some level of tracking of the major market movements, the major indices, and just have that minimum level of market exposure at all times. So that's the balance. In the future, we're looking at implementing much more active trading strategies, but at the launch, we're holding fire with that particular approach.
Seth, could you just talk a little bit about how that differs from some of our competitor wealth management apps without naming names? You know, in
Yeah,
general terms, how is our approach different from what's already available to retail investors?
So the core approach is closer to most of the competitors out there, and typically they're very rigid. They are exposed to they're almost all invested in a very similar, if not almost identical mix of, 60, 70% equities, 30% bonds, and they don't have any flexibility in terms of that exposure. So even if the managers of those portfolios believe that there's about to be a crash in the bond market, for example, they can't reduce their exposure to that market. So it's very rigid, and we think that the world is changing at the moment, and that actually does potentially expose investors to unnecessary risk. So we're designing things to be a little more flexible, but we're applying advanced risk management techniques to achieve the same kind of goals that they're aiming for.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Seth. So I think we covered off that question there. I'm going to jump back to Rudy. I know there's a few questions coming through in the Q&A now, so I'll jump into those next. Before we do that, Rudy, if I could just jump back to you. So obviously on the call, there's a lot of angel investors, and more angel investors from Thunderbeam will be watching the recording of this. So it's great for them to hear from a professional investor such as yourself. How do you see the big trends in fintech right now, either in B2C or B2B? What are the kind of things that are getting you excited, and what do you think the next 12 to 36 months looks like for investing in fintech in general? Could you give a comment on how you see the market and what the near-term future holds?
Sure. Well, one of the key things that you notice is, despite COVID, despite the looming potential economic crisis, the demand for investing, the hunt for yield, or whatever we call it, is still there. I mean, the numbers are growing exponentially. There has been, I just saw a report and spoken to my colleague that the numbers of the amounts people invest or VCs invest in fintechs hasn't dropped. On the other hand, it's still growing. So that's one big lesson there. I mean, it's also not a symptom, but it's due to, if you look at the monetary policy that is currently all over the Western world, or even the developing countries, and the fiscal stimulus that is coming in from governments. The money's there, it's cheap, so people want to invest into smart things, into interesting things. And those, in my opinion, I mean, I for the risk of repeating myself, what we believe and where we want to invest is mainly for first, the new trends, that's new ways how people can invest, and also open banking. But other thing that is very interesting is that, I mean, the past few years have been in the fintech world very much about companies that try to attract the retail customer and monetize him. I mean, this has been extremely difficult, but it's still, a huge potential there. So Pynk is in this space, and I believe is doing very well, looking at the traction that it has shown, especially just the interest of the potential customers has been about 30,000 in 3 months since you guys just even more, yeah.
A bit more than that at the moment. I think Mark, we're verging on about
35, I think now.
Yeah. I was going to say.
But other big trend that we see is that fintechs are starting to focus more on the embedded stuff, let's call it. So on new tools, on new ways how to bring clients that particular feature or that particular solution. So not just bringing him the new retail world, here's one package where you can do everything, but looking on sort of I call it niche fintech. And I think you guys are doing a great job that you're also not doing only just the retail world, let's call it, but you're also offering the white label solutions. You're also working with the B2B sector. So I think that this is very important these days to diversify, not to just focus on one thing. So we very much like startups to do this as well. I mean, the rule of thumb is still there, and it has been that 80% of startups within their first 3 years change their focus on what they're doing. They reinvent themselves a little bit. But it's good when you start to have already this mindset and know that there are different ways how you can monetize and bring investors, of course, their return.
Sure, thanks, Rudy. And this is an honest question. It's not loaded, but obviously, when we pitch Pynk and we talk about Pynk, we talk about the multiple revenue channels that we have at our disposal, including fees generated from AUM in the managed portfolio, and from revenue sales from alternative data that we're now starting to work with partners on, and bespoke crowd wisdom products. Is that normal from what you see in terms of business models? Is that a strength, or is Pynk fairly unique in that regard? How do you view that?
We view it as a strength. I mean, when we look at a startup or a fintech, there are a few things that need to tick. One is you need to have a very good team. We believe that here's the case, definitely. Then you need to have a market that has a huge potential. And then you need to have a product that we believe has a potential in that market to break it. The product that Pynk is offering is in a way very simple, yet very complicated. By simple, I mean it's simply explained. There are many fintechs or many startups there are in love with their product, and the product becomes so complex that they have the founders themselves have a trouble explaining it. In here, we found that it's very straightforward. We know what we're getting ourselves into, and yet there is a deep AI behind the wisdom in crowds. So it's nothing like, it's not a simple thing to copy. So there's a huge potential in that too. Furthermore, we see there's a very good ambition in place with Pynk. And I mean, when we heard, look, our aim is to triple the valuation in the next 18 months. This is something as an investor you want to hear. There's a clear-cut strategy. We know how to get there. We know what sort of AUM we want at what stage. By, I believe you said, like by end of 2020, it'll be 10 million AUM. So the ambition is something that has to be there, and therefore the monetization strategy, even though it's not yet proven, has to make sense. And in here, it does make sense. So this is something that we look into.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Thanks for your comments, Rudy.
Right.
I'm going to jump into some questions on the Q&A section now, and answer some questions from those that have joined the call. Okay, so sorry, Rudy. The first question is back to you. So question for Rudy. There are literally hundreds of fintechs and startups in Europe. What was it that convinced you to invest in Pynk? Obviously, you've covered off some of that already, Rudy. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that in terms of what really got you excited about Pynk and convinced you to invest?
Well, we also always speak to our friends, speak to other investors that we know, and have a chat with them. And I mean, we learned that there are many of them that are looking into Pynk. Also, many VC funds that want to come into the next round. You guys will be definitely setting up potentially the Series A, and many of them are excited to come on board. But the VC, we ourselves focus mainly on the early stage, so the pre-Series A region of investments. But the bigger funds, they come at Series A, Series B, and they want to see their monetization strategy proven, and they already have Pynk on their radar. So this was something that definitely also ticked a big box for us.
Okay, that's encouraging to hear.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm going to cover off another question from the Q&A, and this time it's for Seth. So this is from Kabar, and he asked the question: I believe Pynk has plans to invest in businesses with good prospects and potential. Any idea when that will begin, and will it be within a specific region or global? So what Kabar is asking here is, we have talked about Pynk as an investment company opening up, directing capital into early stage startups. So Seth, would you like to give a comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that's kind of very precious to me, and it's one of the big reasons why we're actually doing this in the first place. I'll just make clear that is not something that we are doing at launch in terms of investing into tech for good, impact based startups. When we launch, we are very much focused on larger, safer investments. But certainly further down the line, it may take a year or a little bit more before we do this. But we very much want to turn the crowd into kind of a research army that can absolutely help us to direct initially small but increasing amounts of money into companies that really deserve that money, that are going to make a big change, a big difference in the world, and that allow us to leave a better world to our children. So it's definitely in the pipeline. I can't put an exact date on it, but yeah, certainly keep your eyes peeled.
Okay, and of course the idea there, the underlying idea is we're using crowd wisdom to select those startups, right?
Absolutely, and I can even see that we will have situations where our crowd members will be able to help those businesses to succeed. So it's not just about crowd funding and crowd intelligence, it's also crowd sourcing. And so we can invest in projects that we believe should make a difference, and where our crowd members can make a difference to those companies and give them a better chance of success. So this isn't really something that's been done before, but it's very much in the pipeline.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Seth. So I'm going to jump back to some questions that were posted into social media. And Seth, I think this is probably with you again. It's about ESG investing. So in the crowdfunding campaign video that is on the Thunderbeam page, we talk about ESG investing, and some people might think it's for the first time. So the question was, why have you suddenly started talking about this, and how is Pynk ESG friendly, and what are you doing about it? So yeah, Seth, I think this is definitely in your court and a topic that's close to your heart.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that we certainly haven't just started talking about it, but I can understand that it may not have been as prominent before. In kind of the previous, certainly the previous crowdfunding video and earlier along in our development, we felt that we needed to explain our system because it was so innovative and unique, and people didn't necessarily understand it. And so it's good to hear Rudy say that we're actually pretty good at explaining kind of the wisdom in crowds now. It's taken a few refinements, but we feel like we're past that stage now, and in general people get the concept that, you know, we're spotting pockets of wisdom at any point in time for any investment decision, and that's helping us make better investment decisions. But now it's time to really kind of shift the focus more onto the mission and the purpose, why we're doing what we're doing, and what it means to investors. So we are talking more now, certainly, about ethical investing, about ESG, etc. And you know, again, this is one of the big drivers for this business. Kind of looking over the previous years, there's been many situations where I've wanted to invest money, and I've found various investment apps and platforms and funds, etc. But when I've looked into the investments that they make, I've pretty much always had problems with some of the contents of the portfolios. And of course, generally, as an investor into a fund or a managed portfolio, you don't get any input. You know, to get that, you have to go it alone. You have to do it yourself. And as we know, there's a drastically increased chance of losing your money, even if you're a very kind of experienced and skilled investor, if you're doing it yourself. So this is why we're building Pynk as a people-powered investment platform. And, you know, we're already involving the crowd in various ways in the decision-making process. And that is going to continue as we move forward. But what we're not saying is that we're building a portfolio that is ethical, that everybody will agree with, because that's actually something that's impossible to do. I mean, obviously, different people have different ethical standpoints. So not only is it impossible to get everyone to agree, but it's almost impossible to get an individual to agree with everything in the portfolio, which is why we're more focused on giving people this ability to influence not just the main portfolio that we invest into, But as the app moves forward and we move on to future versions of it, each individual user will have the ability to actually change what's in their personal portfolio. So we've built all of our technology, and we're continuing to build the technology, and we're being regulated in a way that we can have individualized mini portfolios rather than just one portfolio that is applied to everybody. So when we talk about ethical investing, we're talking about how you can actually influence the ethics of the portfolio.
Okay, fantastic. And so that's in the area of kind of control. And could you talk a bit about transparency of where capital is deployed?
Yes,
that's something that we're bringing into the product as well.
Absolutely. So again, you know, it's hard to give people control and influence over a portfolio if they don't actually understand what's in it. And I think the majority of the world just has money saved in whatever their local bank account is, or their default pension provider at work, etc. And they don't really know what's in the portfolio. That I think a lot of people would have issues with some of the contents of where their money goes. So that the starting point is actually sharing more information and giving people the ability to understand not just what the companies are that they're investing into, but also, you know, what are the ESG policies and other factors to take into account when deciding whether you agree or not with those things. And that will extend even further to, we hope to be able to give users the ability to see upcoming board resolutions and decisions by the companies that are being invested into, and actually being able to vote on those, so that there's a line of communication between people who are investing their money through Pynk and the boards of the companies that are being invested into, so that Pynk users can actually influence the decisions so that they're more in line with their ethical standpoints.
I think that last feature is one that I'm particularly excited about. And it sounds like a distant pipe dream, but actually, you know, we've started working on that. So we will start talking about that more in the near future. So thanks for that, Seth. Okay. Obviously, this call is predominantly about this round on Thunderbeam. So I think we should probably cover off a couple of the questions, the more technical with regards to the convertible notes. So Rue, I'm going to put this one to you, if that's okay. So the question that came through was, can you explain why we're going on to Thunderbeam so quickly after Seeders, and what's the difference in the two convertible notes, and how will this round affect Seeders investors with respect to Series A, which is going to be next year as well? If you could just explain all the detail around that. We have answered this question on the Thunderbeam board already, I believe, and on the Seeders board previously, but this question always comes up, so I think it's good to recap.
Sure.
If you could, really.
Look, I'll do my best. But first reason, well, there are a few combined reasons for why we've ended up doing it in this way. First was, we've got a global community, and many of our community wasn't able to invest into the Seeders crowdfund that we've done previously, because Seeders only accepts capital from about 40 different countries. Thunderbeam accepts capital from about 140 different countries, so there's a big difference there. And we've already seen users from all over the world. In fact, I think on our first day we had 28 different countries investing into the Thunderbeam campaign. So that part is working. The other part is, this round has always been a £2 million round. Seeders was the first sort of 500K or just shy of that initially. Then we've taken on some other individual investors that we've combined with the UK Future Fund, and we're topping off the final last bit of this with Thunderbeam. So overall, we'll get to near £2 million generated, and that's from all the parties involved. And so this will be the final opportunity to actually invest into Pynk for some time, because from this point onwards, it's heads down on getting the investor wallet out and going forward. In terms of the different convertible notes, the reasoning for that is that Seeders community is very much UK based, very much tax incentivized. And so we have a system in the UK called SEIS, or S and EIS, shall I say. The note that was on Seeders was an SEIS friendly convertible note. The note that we are doing right now is part of the Future Fund convertible notes. Largely speaking, they are exactly the same. There are a couple of key differences between the notes. One being, on the first one, you got the SEIS tax advantage if you're part of the UK. The secondary note, there is a potential 8% interest that is beneficial. They both convert at the exact same time, i.e. The conversion event when we raise more than £1 million. As we've said all along, we're planning on doing our Series A next year. We're looking for that to close in June of next year. And that will be a round that is in excess, we'll be raising in excess of £1 million. So they're both going to convert on the same timelines. And they've both got the same valuation cap of £10 million. So at no point can your shares or your portion of the share be converted at any higher than £10 million. I hope that explains it all, Mark. Does that explain the two notes eloquently enough?
Yes, I think that covers it off. Do you think you could just touch a little bit on what the plans are for the next round in terms of a traditional equity round?
Sure.
Give our intention at least.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the plan is to do a traditional priced round. So convertible notes working a little bit differently because they convert into shares at a specified point. A priced round, you convert the shares at the time when people invest. So you give money over, you get shares back for the business. It's very, very traditional way of doing it. The reason for us not doing that this time, but just to be clear, was that we're on this precipice of of launching the investor wallet and taking in our first revenue. So our valuation difference at this point is quite dramatic. So we didn't want to impact the investors. Equally, we didn't want to impact the shares of the company, because there are multiple rounds in the future that we got to plan for. So first off, why did we what are we doing next year? So it's a traditional priced round. We're looking to take on a lead VC of that, which is pretty well named. We've been talking to many of those VCs already, as which Rudy mentioned, that we've been talking to a few in the past, and we're just a bit too early for them. They like to see a little bit more traction, a bit more revenue through the door, but they do like what Pynk is doing. And so we're talking to those guys. We'll pick up conversations with them in December, January, February, and then we'll close off in June.
Fantastic. Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Oh, Mark, your microphone has just decided to cease working, and a very inopportune time. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. There we go.
I was lucky.
Yeah.
Bit of a dodgy microphone. This really need to invest in a new one. Thank you for the clarification, Roo. Very clear. If anyone has any more questions on this, please post them on the Thunderbeam discussion board. Either Roo or myself will respond as quickly as possible. I think we've got time for 2 more questions. I'm going to jump to Rudy for a final question with Rudy, and then a final question for Seth and Roo with regards to the team. So, Rudy, I was wondering if we could, you've talked about Pynk and why you've invested in Pynk. Could we change tacks a little bit and just cover off what are the kind of mistakes that you see other fintechs making? Is there any advice you can give to Pynk, for our startup and any other startups watching this? We have quite a large startup following, so it'd be good to just get some sort of VC perspective in terms of what you see the mistakes are made and anything and pitfalls that we can look out for.
Well, one I already mentioned, and this is a very good question, is getting too much in love with your product.
Right.
Because as a startup, you want to get out there. The name of the game, as many accelerators say, the name of the game is revenue, right? Of course, you don't want to focus on bringing in net income very soon. You don't want to be just bringing dividend to your investors. And I think you want to use that money to scale up. So you need to, first of all, have a product that sells, and then have a story and stick to it that brings the promised result of that vision that you're claiming that you want to become, or where you want to get. So this is something very clear. Of course, there are drawbacks. Of course, it's a startup. So if you show a financial plan for the next 3 years, that's not even a plan. That's a sort of like a, how to put it? That's a wish where you want to get. So no one will blame you if you don't hit the numbers or the precise structure of revenue as you planned. But if the effort remains there, if you focus on that vision, on that story, what you want to bring in, I'm sure you'll succeed, because the investors already told you it makes sense. We believe in it. The clients are there telling you we like it. So if you just be true to that, I don't see any issue there.
Okay,
that's good to know.
Rudy, you make it sound very simple, but I think we'll find it's going to be harder than that. But
I know, it sounds very simple, but it's a very difficult thing to execute. I mean, if it were easy, everyone would do it, and then there would be no reward, right?
Right,
with
exactly.
Risk comes reward.
Exactly, which brings me on to my final question about the team, because obviously it's all about the team that that need to work together in order to deliver on that vision. So
very true.
We had a couple of questions about the team on the Thunderbeam discussion board. So I'll put this to Seth and Rue. And one of the questions was who makes up the investment committee? But the other question was, why do you believe you have the team that you need in order to win and to deliver on the vision of Pynk? So I'd suggest Seth maybe kicks off on that one.
Yeah, so we've got it's a fantastic team. It's more than the sum of its parts, and I think the key is in not just how qualified and experienced each individual is, but it's about how you work together. And we've still got improvements to make, but I think that we are so far certainly working really well together as a team. When we started, we had a few clear gaps in kind of experience and skills, and they were, funnily enough, for fintech, they were in the finance area. But we've been really fortunate to bring in some fantastically experienced and talented people in that respect. Mark Borick has decades of experience of running $10 billion plus funds out in New York. He's taken those funds through multiple financial crises. We have Pune Bligard, who's got 15 years plus fund management and equity research experience. She's just came along at the perfect time for us. She's a key part of the investment committee now. We've got two fantastic AI developers with, again, combined 15 plus years of AI experience. Their systems are responsible for managing billions of dollars in trades on a daily or weekly basis. Some of the biggest institutions, they've done that for the likes of Barclays, etc. So I think it's just a combination of getting really passionate, experienced people on board. I think everyone that's in Pynk really believes in the mission. In the early days, everyone was working for nothing and earning a share of the equity, and that speaks volumes, really. And the work ethic, the camaraderie, and the focus on the goal and on changing the way investments are made for everyday investors. Everyone's on board with that mission, and we're determined, adaptable, and resilient in that respect.
Fantastic, thanks, Seth. And you didn't mention the talent in the marketing team, I note.
Well, you're here to speak for yourself.
But I just take the credit for all the hard work of the other marketers in the team, who are really talented. So, Rue, do you want to add anything to that final question?
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to add from a very much operational perspective is the way we go about hiring or bringing on people. We're very, very trusting as a team. We give a lot of people a lot of flexibility to find their feet and find their opportunity within Pynk, because obviously as a startup, as a growing company, we have to we're growing very quickly, but there's lots of jobs to do, and some of those jobs aren't so obvious to us because we're so heads down in something else. And so we give the entire team the opportunity to pick up on jobs that need to get done, or they identify that need to get done and not being done properly. So whilst as we're growing as a team, we're at that point right now where everybody's kind of a founder of Pynk. And outside of the people that Seth has just mentioned, we've got a world-class development team that we've built up in our own office and in Izmir in Turkey. We've got an incredible executional trader that's joined us very, very early on, and I call him executional trader now, but when Philip joined us, he was doing all sorts of stuff for us in those very, very early days. And then as we expand over to the various different other roles in the company, everybody gets this opportunity to stake their own way that follows the Pynk mindset, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say, and people take ownership, and it's that ownership that helps drive us as a company. It binds us together as a company. And when we do find challenging times, which we've had obviously this year, but also going forward, there's going to be many more other challenging times. It's that ability to kind of pull together as a team. That's one of the rare things, and one of the things I love about Pynk. So I kind of rambled off a little bit there, Mark, but
I'm used to that, Root, so that's fine. I think the only thing that I'd add to that is, part of the Pynk model is, we look for talent in the crowd, and if we have a particular job role that you see as a crowd member and you think that you have the ability and potential to fulfill on that role, then please reach out, because we're starting to recruit people from the crowd, and it's important for us because we need like-minded people in Team Pynk. And just to reiterate as well, Team Pynk is a decentralized team. So whilst Seth and myself are based in London, the company works remotely, and so we have team members around the world. So do bear that in mind if you see job opportunities coming up on our jobs board. So I'm going to wrap up there, guys, because we're 55 minutes in, and I think that's probably enough. And we've got through not all of the questions, but the majority of them. So thank you everyone for joining the call. We will post the recording on YouTube as usual if you'd like to rewatch or share it with other investors to review. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Rudy for joining us today. Fantastic.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. So thanks, Rudy. And thanks for supporting us on our journey. And of course, I'd like to say thank you again to the 104 investors that have come through the Thunderbeam campaign. I'm hoping the number's gone up slightly during this call. But nevertheless, wish everyone a fantastic weekend and speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.